Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1283 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Season 4 of Yes, We Are Open, the award-winning podcast from Moneris, hosted by FOTM Al Grego. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. The Moment Lab. Brand marketing and strategy, PR, advertising, and production. You need the Moment Lab. And Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making their Toronto Mic'd debut, is Andi. Andi, welcome to Toronto Mic'd.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you having me.
You've been to a TMLX event, haven't you?
I have, yeah. TMLX
8?
8. The final Pandemic Fridays at Great Lakes Brewery.
Yeah, the Pandemic Friday finale. That was a fun day.
It was a great day. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was interesting to meet a lot of the folks who I had heard over the last couple of years over the podcast. And so to get the opportunity to see people in person was a bit surreal for me.
Was Stu Stone as advertised?
And as advertised and better.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, Andi, we're going to absorb your story. I'm going to have questions along the way. I want your complete story. But before we begin, let's crack open a cold, fresh Great Lakes beer. You've got a burst. I've got a sunny side. So let's hear it right on the mic there.
Here we go.
See, Andi, you were about 6 inches below the mic. You got to get right in front here. I'll show you how it's done for next time. Okay, don't worry. I'll teach you from the professional. All right. Cheers to you, Andi.
Cheers. Thank you for having me. And thanks to Great Lakes for the fantastic products.
Oh, you're going to bring some home with you. Do you like Italian food?
If it's Palmas.
Okay, well, you got Palma. Andi knows the drill. Okay, so I got a lasagna for you in the freezer. So you got your lasagna, you got your fresh Great Lakes beer, you've got your wireless speaker courtesy of Moneris, so awesome. You know what to do with that. You can listen to Season 4 of Yes, We Are Open, which is an inspiring podcast hosted by FOTM Al Grego, who you probably met at TMLX 8. And I have a flashlight for you from Ridley Funeral Home, so you're not going home empty-handed.
This will be helpful if I have to do some grave digging.
I'm looking. So how many tattoos do you have, Andi?
I can't answer that question. I've lost count, and I think that it would depend on what you saw as one or many tattoos. So I will just like to talk about a percentage of my body.
Okay, let's hear it.
I would say I'm at about 42% of my body.
Was it painful? You got a high pain threshold?
I mean, I would say it's based on a lot of different factors in terms of where you're being tattooed, what kind of tattooed style it's going to be, the hours of the sitting. But I would say overall, it's been worth it.
You're happy with your decisions in life to get all this ink, 42% of your body.
Yeah, and I have kept going. So I'm at almost 20 years, and I'll probably be getting tattooed for the next 20. So,
well, I was going to say, you're at 42. You stay there because that's the answer to all of life's mysteries, right? That's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy magic number, 42.
Well, I'm 37, so I've got 5 more years. So let's burn it out.
Okay, so you're 37 years old. Andi, now I'm going to sit back and do a lot of listening now. So now that you're comfortable, you've had a couple sips of your delicious IPA from Great Lakes Brewery. Yeah, start in you start where you're comfortable starting, and I want the full and complete story.
Sure. So I guess helpful to understand about me is I've been working as a social worker for a number of years. I work in community mental health, specifically like in an early intervention psychosis program. Been doing that at Church and Wellesley in various roles for the last, they're 7 years. And then that I worked at Covenant House.
Can you like just give us a little detail what that entails? Because those are kind of like fancy big names, and I just like dumb it down for me. I'm not as smart as you, Andy.
So, well, beg to differ. But what I do typically is when a person experiences a first episode psychosis and there's a hospitalization, typically that person will be released from hospital and requires some sort of outpatient supports. And so we work specifically with youth, ages our program 14 to 24, and then we kind of help them and their families in a recovery process, reconnecting to services, figuring out school pieces, work pieces, and helping people to kind of live their best lives. Wow,
that's important work. So when you talk about psychosis, this is like delusions?
Well, psychosis is a broad term, right? So psychosis is a set of, we look at psychosis as a symptom, right? And so psychosis can often be associated with schizophrenia, but also things like bipolar and trauma, substance-induced. So it really is more of a descriptor of what people would see as often active symptoms. But it is a broader thing, I think, often misunderstood. So our team works specifically with folks who have kind of gone through this process, and we bring, I think, an interesting perspective to the work.
What made you want to get into that line of work?
So my own experience of, being a closeted trans person for a long time, my own experiences with
spoiler alert, Andy.
Yeah, my own experiences with mental health. I've struggled a lot. I was diagnosed with ADHD or assessed with ADHD at a very young age, and didn't really have any proper treatment. And so for me, I've struggled a lot, but have kind of overcome a lot of those struggles. So I completed my undergrad. I did a postgrad certificate. I did a master's degree, and did so with understanding or thinking that life was hard, like had to be this hard. And so for me, I kind of felt that I understood a struggle that some of our clients might face. Well, not the same, but able to build like a lot of empathy for people. And so I think it's kind of what put me in that field, specifically feeling misunderstood and feeling like people didn't see who I was.
Well, good on you, because that's important work you're doing. And this is young people at their most vulnerable, right? When, as I understand it, be it schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, like it typically arises when somebody's like a teenager or in their early 20s, right? That's when it's like, yeah. So you're there to help with the, I guess, transition back to life, back to reality. Shout out to FOTM Simon Law from Soul to Soul.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's part of too, just thinking that there's a lot of stigma around what these things mean.
Right.
And so I think sometimes having people to share that just because somebody may have a diagnosis of schizophrenia doesn't mean that their life is over. It doesn't mean that it's all scary. That a lot of beautiful people have what we call these diagnoses and still do amazing things.
Oh, without a doubt. So yeah, thank you for your efforts there. Now, so you dropped the term closeted trans person. So we will absolutely be, diving into that, and I have questions. But on our way to that, you wrote me an email. This is why you showed up and jumped on the mic at TMLX 8. Let's assume that the listenership for this episode has not heard that frenetic 3 hours I recorded from TMLX 8. So if you don't mind, share that story with me, and then we'll discuss what's new with you, Andy.
Sure. So during that time, I was pretty isolated. I think a lot of us, a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I connected with were experiencing such a change in the way we lived. For me in particular, a lot of the ways that I had kind of coped through my mental health and the things that were happening for me was being outside, was being around people. That's always kind of been my strong suit. I've always kind of been a people person. And I think that over that period of time, I really felt disconnected from the world. There was a lot of things in my life that were going on There was some challenges with some grief and some loss from a family member. There was a difficult relationship, some financial issues, major work changes, and it was kind of like all coming down. So I was in this situation where over the pandemic, I would kind of wake up and I'd really just walk 10 hours a day sometimes, or 8 hours a day. People would, often joke that I was the quote unquote walking guy.
Well, that's Ben Rayner-esque.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing here.
Yeah, I hear similarities when he talks about it, right? I just walk. I felt like I didn't have a lot of purpose. I just had to get out. And so I had found your podcast probably in December of 2018 and had started to listen, but wasn't listening kind of every week. I wouldn't say it was.
Shame on you.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes love takes work, right?
Love takes time
Exactly.
to heal when it hurts so much.
And I remember listening to the first Pandemic Fridays, and I didn't know who Cam was or Stu was, and had listened to your voice, but immediately there was something that stuck in. I felt like I kind of had people I was going along the ride with. And so what it did for me was it really brought, like, every Friday there was this thing where I was so excited and I would get the podcast ready. And I knew that if I had a 7-hour walk for the day, that 3 hours would be with you guys.
All right. So along this way, as we chat about everything, I will interject. And it's fascinating for me to hear your story with regards to Pandemic Fridays, because that's literally our vision at the time. So we were all in it together and none of us knew what the fuck was going on. So it was Friday the 13th of March, 2020. School was going to be out for the March break.
Right.
Little did we know, I guess, but yeah, we knew it would be longer than the March break. But, that was the whole social isolation, stop going to work, stop going to school. What's going on? What do you mean I can't have guests in the basement? You and I are what, 3 feet apart here chatting. I remember Peter Gross came over on the Monday and I'm like, Peter, because every Monday he'd come over to do Down the Stretch. And I remember telling Peter, I don't think you can come over anymore. I don't think I'm allowed to. It felt like I'd be breaking some law if a human was in this basement with me that didn't live with me. It was really scary times. And I do recall Cam Gordon, Stu Stone, and I had an emergency summit. And in this conversation, it might have been Stu, but somebody said, we need to do something this Friday to kind of just to keep the FOTMs, give them hope, and just give some people something to look forward to. And then we quickly decided that we should do it every Friday until the end of the pandemic. And as you know, that ended up being, I think we couldn't make it to the end of the pandemic. I don't even know. Is it over now? Maybe.
Well, there's Palmas pasta here, so.
So and I'm just so happy to hear that there was somebody out there who kind of leaned in on the Pandemic Fridays and kind of joined us, because we were all lost and we were all confused, and what's next, and are we going to die from this COVID, and what do we do now? And so, it's amazing you were there for that journey. Yeah,
it was an unlikely find, right? When you kind of listen to a podcast for the first time years ago and then listen to this first Pandemic Fridays, then there's this point at which you're back on a show. It's never what you expect, right? It's kind of sometimes things just come full circle. And so in that, I think when I wrote you the letter, part of what I had talked about was that over this time, things were really, really tough. And so I was kind of looking for things that brought comfort. And when I think back to kind of a young punk rock Canadian much music kid watching TV and the top 30 countdown every day after school, a lot of the music was of that ilk, right? So it was of that same kind of vintage where we're talking a lot about the Killjoys and 5440, Tragically Hip, things that we would regularly watch, right? And so being able to kind of engage again with that music during that time, in particular, really brought me a lot of joy. And it kind of gave me a sense of connection that I was lacking elsewhere, which was really powerful for me. And so I think, when I wrote you that letter, I didn't really think that it would be a big deal to you. Not to be rude, but just the sense that like I just didn't think that. I thought lots of people were touched this way, and lots of people had maybe written a letter like this, right? And so I think when I heard back kind of some of the response from it, I realized, there is kind of a special connection to this show.
Well, am I allowed to read from the letter? Or
Sure, please do.
So this is Andy wrote this. Pre-pandemic, I was a regular listener, definitely more than a cherry picker. And at the beginning of the pandemic, with nothing to do and a great deal of uncertainty and anxiety, I dug into your podcast. I still remember the first episode of Pandemic Fridays. That was March 20th, by the way, 2020. And thinking this might be a fun thing for the next few weeks until all this blows over. During the pandemic, like many, I experienced a great deal of loss. Passing of a cherished family member, loss of social circles, regular ways of coping, etc., etc. Your podcast, particularly Pandemic Fridays, has kept me going the last 16 months. So that's when you wrote this. Knowing that each and every Friday, no matter how rough or crappy of a week, and you put Friday in quotes because we did move it to Thursdays and it kind of bounced, but it came Thursdays. But yeah, we still called it Pandemic Fridays. I would have a new episode to listen to. It brought a ton of joy, laughs, occasional tears, memories, and reflection. It's helped me reconnect with parts of myself from the past, particularly my 13-year-old self that sat in front of the TV for hours watching much music, soaking up whatever can rock I could. You obviously, you mentioned that the Killjoys was a personal favorite, and you were at their show at the Horseshoe a couple years back. I could go on forever, but I want to say thank you to yourself, Stu, and Cam for creating something that has been an anchor during a rough period. I will miss the show dearly, but I'm hopeful for the periodic reunions. I'm in the city. Okay, so you did show up for the finale at Great Lakes Brewery.
I did, yeah. And
that's awesome. We did bring it back as Toast. And I don't know, did you listen to any Toast episodes?
Yeah, I have listened to Toast. I still listen to Toast, occasional Toast. I mean, Toast was initially, I think, Cam and Stu, and then there's been some trade-offs. I ran into Stu I ran into Stu at Absolute Comedy probably like 6 weeks ago, and I was like,
wow. So he's in the country.
Maybe probably like late April, early May, and I was like, Stu, what's going on with the show?
What did he say? Because I haven't had this combo with him in a while.
He said he couldn't tell. He said, don't worry about it. It was very Stu, professional.
Now, Stu, I will say, because I've been following Stu's adventures, he spent the vast majority of the time this year in the States filming that Dark Side of the Ring.
Right, which is great for him. It's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, it's good for him, bad for me. But okay, so, but then coinciding with Stu Stone being busy, filming the Dark Side of the Ring, Cam Gordon got a new job and he was laying low and he's still laying low. So here we are chatting in late June, the last day of June, 2023. And neither Stu nor Cam have been on Toronto Mic'd in this calendar year. Shocking, right?
Well, I think sometimes, you kind of just appreciate what you have in the moment, right? And nothing is guaranteed. And I think it's one of those things where you look back and you think, that show is over, but it doesn't mean it's, not part of my life and didn't impact me the way it did. And
they will be back, eventually. But I will just shout out Rob Bruce and Bob Willett because they will actually be in this basement Sunday at 11 a.m. for a new episode of Toast because they actually will do it where Cam and Stu won't. So I have Rob Bruce and we're going to kick out quintessential Canadian jam.
Awesome.
So so I hope you tune in, Andy. Okay, so pick up the story. I read your letter at the time. Pandemic Fridays came to an end, that glorious evening on the patio of Great Lakes Brewery. That was, I'm going to say, early September, maybe?
Was it late August?
Maybe late August, yeah.
Kind of like right at that tail end.
By the way,
of
we'll be
summer.
back. So I'll just let you know, TMLX 13 will be at Great Lakes Brewery again. It'll be the last day of August, so August 31st, 2023. So I hope to see you there.
We'll be there. I guess from there... I think after that, work started to kind of reopen again, and that year I was finishing up my master's in social work, doing like just busy. And shortly after that episode, I had some major life changes, and so one was kind of like an ending of a long relationship, and kind of a resense of self, and looking at who I am and the kinds of people that I want to continue in that sort of relationship with. And around that time, I met my fiance. So we're now engaged.
Congratulations.
Thank you. You've also met my fiance. Here's a.
I'm bracing myself.
Here's
now.
a bit of an interesting story that you don't know. So we went to the Rusty show at Sneaky D's, and my fiance was taking a film of a Rusty song where you were announced in the song
Empty Cell,
and asked her for the video. So
Yes.
we were listening to Toast, or I think it was Toast, or Cam and Stu were both on afterwards, and they're talking about how they're like, did you harass some woman at the show?
Well, okay, so just to catch up here, this is mind blow. I had no idea this was coming, but
That's my fiance.
oh my God. Okay, so I saw a young woman recording the Empty Cell, and I desperately wanted to have a copy. So I think I approached your fiance, and, who I didn't know was your fiance, obviously. But I'm like, I don't know. I might have said something like, I'm Mike at TorontoMike.com. Can you email me that file or share that file with me? I'll just let you know your fiance never did share that file.
No,
with
so
me.
here's the story: is she knows who you are because we listen together. So then I'm like, oh shit, like they don't recognize me. Like I gotta like get out of here. Like you go have this conversation. They don't remember me from back then. And what was funny was when we were thinking about why you were asking for it, we realized that you wanted the shout out.
Yes, of course.
So when we went to go pull the video up, there was only 4 seconds. She only had like 10 seconds of the song.
I thought she had,
and she didn't have the shout out.
Okay.
So I was like, well, how do we send him the video that doesn't even have the shout out in it? Like, so that's why the video never came up, and that's the story.
I did find, so I did get it. Somebody else recorded and put it on YouTube, and then I eventually did get that audio. If I had known the story, I might have pulled it up right now. But yeah, so I do have Empty Cell live at Sneaky D's with the Toronto Mike shout out in the middle from Ken, FOTM Ken from Rusty. And I love the shout out. And that is wild to me that this small world story here, that the woman I asked for the video, because Cam witnessed this. That's how it came up on Toast.
They were talking about it on the air, and we're lying in bed listening to it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's us.
But that's fair game, right? To politely ask somebody, because Cam's harassing this young woman.
Yeah, no.
It's like, I want the video, and I'm like, email me the video if you took video of it.
So, just for all points, we thought that the descriptor that was used in that episode was not really accurate. It was
what did they say? I was creepy or something. What did they call me?
I don't know, but it wasn't.
Bullshit.
And the funny thing was that like she knows who you are because we listened to it.
What's her name?
Her name's Christina.
Okay. Hi, Christina.
And Christina helps me run our initiative now, so we run this together.
Christina just said, Mike, do you know who I am? And then told me this, reminded me that Andi, and then blah, blah, blah. But please continue.
Yeah, so that's a funny mind blow. And I told Christina.
That's good.
I told Christina we'd share this one on the air so that you could hear it.
That was a great show, right?
It was a great show.
I love Rusty.
Me too.
And I love that venue for Rusty because it's so intimate.
Yeah.
I almost jumped on stage with them. Like, I loved it. I had a great night. So Cam was there with his fiance, and they're getting married in like less than 2 weeks.
Amazing.
I think a week today, to be honest with you. And I do not believe Stu Stone will be at this wedding. There's a mind blow for everybody. So, but I do believe I will be at this wedding.
Well,
you can be my plus one.
I'd love to. Yeah, so we're engaged as well, and we're going to be looking at getting married next September. So, if you play your cards right, there could be an invite for you as well.
All right, as long as you don't do what Cam has done. No. Cam and his fiance have given me instructions on like what songs to play at which moments. Like I actually have do you remember in Seinfeld when Whatley, the dentist, would have people over and give them tasks to do at the party? Like I have lots to do at this wedding next Friday, but I'll report back to everybody because Cam doesn't come on Toronto Mike anymore, so I can just do the real talk here. Okay, so you're engaged to be married to Christina, who I met at Sneaky D's during a Rusty show. Please keep going because you said closeted trans person, so keep going with your story.
Sure. So I have been for a long time doing a lot of work in the community, really working hard at like my job and going to school. I've been in school forever, and I always kind of, there was this thing that I wasn't talking about. There was this thing that I wasn't sharing, and it was had a lot to do with my gender identity and my sexuality, and there was lots of things that were happening for me. And so like in my workspace, I work at Church in Wellesley. I've always worked with like a lot of queer and trans folks, and I've had some like really close relationships with these people over the years. So I kind of had found a way to like show up as a ally, because I was scared about coming out. And I didn't always have exactly all the language. I didn't always know exactly what it was, but I knew that, part of me was different than the way that I was portraying myself, and have always felt that way. Like even thinking back to a kid, like I would kiss boys, or I would ask for like pink toys, things that were very like gender binaried. I was attracted to other things that would say like, that's for a girl. And I would say, well, I want that. And so like, there's a lot of, in my childhood, these kinds of experiences. My partner has been a great support for me. They're the ones that I kind of came out to first. And they're also a queer person. And
this is Christina.
Yeah, Christina.
So Christina's pronouns are
she, they.
Okay.
And
she, they.
Yeah. I use they, them. And so when we kind of did this, we talked about it, and she was a huge support to me, and really like helped us to kind of come together, and has been there beside me through the whole thing. I only came out about 3 months ago, so it's been a really new thing, but we've been doing a lot since. And so I've got this background in community development, working with groups. We used to run, or I've been part of taking youth to the Madawaska River, doing rapids. I've always been that kind of person. And so now what I've done is kind of shifted this momentum and this skill set to kind of work with in a sport that I love, which is disc golf, and to support queer and trans and LGBTQ folks, and really anybody with barriers to the sport to come in. And it's something that we've taken a lot of time and a lot of pride putting together. And it's for me, somebody who has always felt that I don't live up to my potential, to feel as though I can do that, has given me a new sense of confidence in who I am. And it's allowed me to kind of step into who I am. And it's been amazing for me, really.
Now, am I allowed to ask you anything? Like, I have questions, but I don't. Yeah, okay. Because my apologies if I mess up here. But
it's okay.
Okay, so great. So I had some ignorance to much of what you're speaking of until I watched this. It sounds almost embarrassing to say, but I watched the series Transparent. Did you ever see Transparent?
I haven't seen it, but I know about it.
Which I loved. I loved Transparent. And it kind of helped me realize that, the gender with which you identify with is actually like mutually exclusive from your sexuality. So
Totally. So I identify as trans, but also pansexual. And so what I mean by that is like, I'm a trans person. I kind of identify in gender wise, very fluid in lots of different, depending on spaces, depending on how I feel. And then in terms of like sexual attraction, I'm attracted to really anybody, in terms of like, I don't look at like gender or gender presentation or sexuality and how I would love someone or share that.
Right. You're attracted to somebody's spirit, their soul, so to speak.
Totally.
I think I put over the 1,283 episodes, I probably stuck my foot in my mouth multiple times, but I know there was a moment with Avery Haynes where Avery Haynes was married to a man for a long time, and then Avery Haynes got married to a woman. And I think like an idiot, I think I asked Avery if she had come out as a lesbian, and she was explaining fluidity, much like you are now. So I'm always learning. Like I am always learning. I'm a boring heterosexual cis, white male. So I'm always learning. So I understand the fluidity of sexual attraction, but just back to you being a trans person. So you don't identify with any gender. Your pronouns are them, they, and you're non-binary.
Yeah. So in the way how I kind of see it is that like I don't look at my gender as something that's like a binary or a binary construct. That like I feel different types of ways throughout my whole life, and looking back on that through my life experience, it kind of all makes sense. I think it can be hard sometimes to explain this to somebody who isn't quite there, because it's kind of like asking somebody like, how do you know you're a guy, right? Or asking someone, how do you know you're a woman, or how do you know you're trans or trans non-binary? Sometimes you just kind of know. And so it's the kind of thing where it's hard to always describe it to people, because a lot of it is like kind of an internal experience.
Well, that's why you're here, because I get to grill you, and if I sound ridiculous, then it's on me here. But okay, so you lived most of your life with the gender assigned to you at birth,
correct?
Which was male,
right.
And you had a name, which is now your dead name, but you had a name that is typically used by people who identify as men. Him, his, which would be the pronouns I typically use. He, him, right? Thank you. We'll get there. We'll get there together. Okay, Andy, we're doing this together. So you have a dead name, and now you go by Andi, and I should point out Andy's with an I.
Right. And so that name, there was a time in my life where I kind of met an interesting group of folks, like kind of in the punk rock scene in my teenage years, where I would say in my life where I felt more of a belonging, and their nickname for me during that time was Andi with a Y. And so when I was kind of picking something that I wanted to go by, it felt like a really natural transition for me. And then putting the I on was just because, like, I don't know, I's kind of fun.
Well, so one of my questions is like, we just, although we had met at TMLX 8, that's been a while. It was a while. That day was a blur for me.
A couple years ago almost.
And it was a blur because those events, I meet like 100 people, and so sometimes it's tough to retain specific moments and stuff. But now we're one-on-one, right? Like, so I'll never forget meeting Andi today. It's a whole different experience, one-on-one for however long we talk. But today I noticed, you're 42% of your body is covered in ink. You've got lots of these tattoos. You've got I wish I could grow a beard like you grow. Like, I'm jealous.
It's a lot longer, but before I got it cut down today.
You got a cut today?
Yeah.
How long was it?
Like 3 or 4 times the length.
You should have kept it, man.
I had to look good.
So, yeah, well, I got to do a comparison before and after. Okay. But that's this presentation, right? Black t-shirt, like I would call like ink and the beard. It would be a presentation. Typically, is it fair to say typically associated with men?
Sure. And I think like that sometimes confirms or reinforces gender binary.
Well, talk to me about that, because I'm sure you're being misgendered left, right, and center.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the thing about me that you don't see is I wear different things in different spaces, and so a lot of times, like, I'll wear like pink, and I'll wear some of my fiance's clothing. I'm very fluid in how I feel, right? And so there's like part of me that really likes like black t-shirts and black cutoffs, because I also love crust punk. And that's like a big part of me, right? And there's parts of me that love like a pink shirt that's cut off, and you can it kind of hangs down 12 feet and is oversized and looks like more like what would be considered a dress, right? And so I like to like play with that and do different sorts of clothing. So I don't like dependent on the spaces that I'm in, I definitely look different in how I feel. I dress different, and so that's kind of been a big thing for me.
And we're definitely going to get back to the disc golf, okay? So that I've taken a note there. You referred to yourself as a closeted trans person.
I was previously.
Right, now you're out of the closet. So how long ago did you come out of the closet?
Just like 3 months ago.
Okay, it's fresh. Okay.
Yeah, it's fresh.
And tell me, what does that entail? Is that as simple as that was my dead name, this is my new name, and these are my pronouns now? Is it as simple as that?
I mean, it depends on the audience, right? And I think that there's like been some people who have been like just huge supporters of me and have loved me, and people that have really shown up for me have continued to show up and have been there kind of since day one. Other folks, I think that there's been more hurdles to that. But for me, the reality is that where I'm at in my life is that I don't have time to worry about how everybody understands me. And I don't really want to have to re-educate people to the point of where I'm trying to justify who I am, right? And so what I say is like, what I think kind of happened was in the process of coming out, it kind of strengthened certain relationships, and then also kind of made other relationships that I thought were a bit stronger, maybe just a little less close. And I kind of, would use my time and resources to spend it with the people that I knew just really supported me. Not because, I was necessarily mad at people, but it was just because that's kind of what I needed.
Well, I was going to ask you if there's any flack from anyone, because I have 4 kids, and if any of my children were to come out as a trans person or even just change their pronouns, I would 100% be supportive and adapt very quickly.
Yeah.
And I just love my children's souls. Like, I'm not, I did assign them a gender at birth. And even the other day I was telling my wife, I was like, why are we assigning gender at birth again? Like, if even that feels antiquated now, like the whole assigning gender at birth.
So I don't know about all those kinds of issues. I don't know what, where I kind of know where I am and where I am right now. And to be honest, I don't think kids are really in our cards. So it's not something I've had to really think about. But I think that they're like the idea that love and support are kind of central in understanding and supporting trans people. That when we look at the research and when we look at the statistics, family support, whether that's biological family or chosen family, and having support systems in place that love and affirm people tend to be really protective. When we think about some of the challenges that people might experience from transphobia. And I've worked a lot in mental health and worked a lot at Church in Wellesley. And so I do understand a lot of these issues also before coming out because of just the line of work and where I work, right? So it's part of kind of my lived experience from personal and professional.
Recent Toronto Mic'd episodes, referring specifically to the episode of Colin Mockery and Deborah McGrath and Sandra Plagakis. They have children who are trans. And we talked about what I would deem to you, and I'm curious about your experiences, but there's a lot of anti-trans out there. Like, it's almost like this last bastion of hate that seems like, I'm not going to call it socially acceptable, because if I sniff it somewhere, I stomp on it. Like, that's no hate here. Mm-hmm. But be it Dave Chappelle or J.K. Rowling's, and you name it, these mainstream people seem to float these anti-trans sentiments. And I'm wondering if any of that has hit you as you come out.
I am. I think it's a pretty tricky topic, because I think that there are things that are more overt when people are kind of in positions of power, specifically if they have large media platforms, that those things are very visible, right? That I think most reasonable people could see as transphobic if they're blatantly saying it, right? And then I think there's also things that are a little bit more kind of under the radar, that are more kind of those individual experiences that show up in someone's day-to-day that may be harder to miss. And so those sorts of things, I think, is what is harder to describe or bring attention to sometimes, because ultimately, when a larger sort of figure takes on these opinions and shares those opinions widely, and nonetheless influences how other people think, right? And that those experiences then kind of come down in other ways, right? And so if people are listening to what someone is saying about trans people being, X and Y and Z, right?
Z.
Yeah, they begin to kind of think about those things as well, right? And that kind of influences public opinion, which leads to kind of a bias or stigma and kind of impacts things at lots of different levels.
Well, one way to, be, I guess, a little more passive aggressive with your anti-trans sentiments and thoughts is to intentionally misgender you, right?
Sure.
using your dead name or calling you dude or using the pronouns him, he, just intentionally like trying to reinforce like your gender needs to match your genitalia.
Right. And I think that like in some respects, like we're seeing a lot of people that are being challenged by things that don't fit within a binary, right? And so I think that when people sometimes feel that their ideas of the world are challenged, that they kind of hold on harder, right? They kind of get louder. And so I see it as like in some ways that kind of like, in some ways I see this kind of outwardly like hate that's happening. We're seeing what's happening in the States with laws, is sometimes you wonder if it's like also them losing some ground, right? And kind of like now these things are really like in the public conscious, people are talking about it in different kinds of ways, and that it's like feels like it's even though it is disgusting, there is some sense of like, well, they're hearing us, and now they're like, it's kind of like mounting that battle, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Question about your fiance.
Yeah.
So, firstly, even if you realize, I don't have the Toronto Mike shout out in the empty cell video, Christina could send an email to me to say, hey, I'm the person you asked for the video, and I'm just letting you know I actually don't have the shout out. Like just a little courtesy note.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because I was like waiting, and it's like, it's not coming. I don't have it. And it was a long time before I finally found somebody who did have it. Because, it wasn't like there was 20,000 people at that concert. But there you go. So there you go. Now I feel better for expressing that. Christina could have sent me an email to say, I don't actually have the video. I'm sorry.
Right. But I guess like at the same time too, when you walk up to someone randomly at the bar and provide you this little context that they may or may not get back to you, right? Like it is like
I know, but now that I know that Christina knew who I was, I'm taking it very personally. Okay, but one more question about Christina's pronouns. There's almost like a mix and a match there, right? Because it's mix and match. What is this? The mattress sale from Christina?
Well, I guess, yeah.
Because she, they. I have a legit question about she, they. What is the spirit behind she, they, as opposed to them, they?
Well, I think that, just to be completely like respectful and stuff, that that is their kind of story and their experience.
And Christina's not here.
Christina's not here. And so for me to speak to that is not really on me, right? Because I can explain like what something comes from my perspective or worldview, but from hers, it might be something different. And so like,
I'm just a curious cat. Anyway,
yeah. So if you want to bring us
my curse and my blessing,
bring us back together, then I can, I'm sure she would share. But I just feel like speaking on her behalf is not.
Wait, okay, because there you go. Did you hear yourself? You said her behalf.
Sure,
but it's their behalf.
No, she uses she and they. So that's a flexible.
Oh,
pronoun.
I thought it was that it was she and that and okay. So either or.
Either or.
Gotcha. I completely misunderstood. I thought it was yes. Okay. So
you called me out for you tried to call me out for misgendering someone when I didn't misgender them.
Right. Well, this is part of this is it.
Part of learning, right?
You told me I could ask you anything, and I'm fully comfortable to ask you anything. And that was something I was confused by, she, they, but it's actually just either or. It's not a she, they versus she, her. Which is how I interpreted it is. Instead of she, her, it's she, they. Okay, now...
Yeah, now we're there.
I get it. Either or.
Before I came out with they, them pronouns, I started with, for me personally, I started with he, they. And so I used that pronoun because for me, it felt a little bit safer.
See, but if I'm confused, I bet you there's someone else is confused. So I get it.
Yeah.
Completely understand it now. Okay. So now you're them, they strictly as your
they, them.
Preferred pronouns.
Yeah, so I use they, them as my pronouns now. And I mean, that could change. I don't know, I just know kind of where I'm at right now.
Do you find it annoying when somebody like me asks you a bunch of questions about something as personal as your, gender identity and sexuality?
Here's the thing is that like, I'm also consenting to being on this show.
That's true. You did consent.
I know who you are.
We're not on the subway right now.
Right. And so like, I know what you've used your platform in the past for. And like I'm not sure what name she's using, but AJ Andrews when
She.
yeah. So I'm not sure is she still using the name AJ or there was
Ariana.
Ariana. So when Ariana came on, I listened to all of her stuff.
Fascinating.
And so
Right.
so that's kind of like, to be completely frank, if I hadn't have listened to those episodes, I'm not sure that I would have necessarily reached out to come on the show. But because
Sure.
you never know. Right. But in hearing and how you connected with and provided a platform, for some marginalized voices in sports media in particular, made me feel that, I'll go on that show, because even if there's maybe pieces that you do or don't understand, we can't understand everybody's perspectives and everyone's worldviews, right? That there's a sense of of trust or a sense of familiarity in what your motivations are and who you've helped and supported in the past.
And it's interesting how it all kind of ties together, that Ariana Andrews, part of her coming out as a trans woman was hearing Scott MacArthur come out as a gay man. Scott did just return to Toronto Mike earlier this month, and people should check that out, because Scott is up in Quit Radio and is moving out east, and it's a fascinating episode of Toronto Mike with Scott MacArthur. But Ariana Andrews, we are actually due for a follow-up, because last we spoke, Ariana was getting gender reassignment surgery, and I need to find out how that went. So Ariana, she's a good FOTM, and I'm glad you listened to those episodes.
Yeah, I think she's been on twice, right?
Twice, yeah.
Yeah, I've listened to both those episodes, and I think she's done a really amazing job. Just, listening to her, it was really inspiring for me, and was a big part of why I reached out.
I'm glad you reached out, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. And now I want to pick up something you dropped, which was disc golf,
right?
And how that ties to all of this.
Yeah. So when I came out as trans, me and my partner started to think about disc golf, and so disc golf was something that I started playing about a year ago. It was, for the person that was walking 8 or 9 kilometers a day,
right?
Or sorry, 8 or 9 hours a day.
Right, which is much more. Yeah.
Much more, 20 kilometers.
Wow.
There was a sense of purpose, and there was an athletic movement, and there was serenity or calm being in the woods or being in nature and all these sorts of places. And I really fell in love with the game. And when I started to play disc golf, I was coming from playing golf with some friends, and it was getting expensive. I couldn't afford it. And it was she's like, I'm going to have to spend $5,000 a year to maybe get okay at this. Right. And it didn't really seem like there was a lot of the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
From my perspective, right? Other people may think different, but from my perspective,
well, golf ruins a good walk.
Yeah. And disc golf actually enhances it. And that's the way.
Where do you play?
So I play all over. I'm part of a few different leagues. I run Toronto Queer Disc Golf, which you can find us on Instagram at Toronto Queer Disc Golf. And we run a Tuesday league at Maryland Bell Park, Lakeshore. I also play at the Centennial League on Mondays, which is up at Centennial Park. I sometimes do Glow Night at the beach, or at Glow Night at Maryland Bell. We play ladies leagues on Thursdays sometimes. So we're really kind of out there in lots of different spaces. And disc golf is a really fast growing sport. And it's been a really fruitful way to spend our time. And then the natural connection to a disc golf initiative to support LGBTQ players to access a sport has really helped me in my own journey and my understanding of myself by connecting with other queer players and playing with them as well. And so I've brought in, we started doing this thing, and, it's really been a labor of love, but we recently, with the help of some other queer sports leagues, like Queer Jocks TO, there's a queer forest club, there's all these different communities, right, there's a queer pickleball club, and we all kind of support each other in some of those pieces. And so I was able to connect with those folks for some input, and then we started, doing the league. So I kind of had a bunch of support from the queer community, and then a ton of love and support from the disc golf community. And so there was folks from women's disc golf, Toronto Women's Disc Golf were helping us out. Folks from Chain Link Disc Golf were helping us out. folks from all the different leagues were coming and like supporting us. We did a launch at a tournament called Slamboree in Brampton, which was run by She Dizer Discs and Hops and Dizers. So like a bunch of community members kind of put us up. And so I kind of had the momentum to run with it. And, but, you know, really it was this propping of different folks that really saw the message that we were doing. And it's exciting for me because we just agreed to a partnership with Neptune Discs out of out of Virginia, who sponsored Natalie Ryan. Natalie Ryan is the #1 female athlete in disc golf and also a trans woman who has been fighting for the right to play in women's leagues. And so now we're part of that group and we're kind of together doing this. And so it's a really exciting time for us around making changes and making a sport inclusive. It's a lot of work. Does it open us up to negative opinions and people criticizing what we're trying to do? Possibly, but at the end of the day,
well, fuck those people.
Fuck those people. At the end of the day, I take all that stuff.
Send them over here.
Wow. Okay. We'll hit him with this. Is this frozen? We'll hit him with this.
It's in my freezer, actually. But that's
24-hour
an empty box. I don't hit him with that.
24-hour thaw cycle. So we got 24 hours to knock him dead. But the idea is that, like, you know, together, there's so much love, right? And there's so much support that a disc manufacturer that's, you know, sponsoring a major disc golf athlete is kind of seeing what we're doing on a small scale and supporting it, right? And it's really nice because it's really beautiful because the first day when we started the Instagram account, it was really small, and I reached out to this company to explain what we were doing, and they got back to us right away. And so to me, that's like a very genuine.
No, I love hearing this, particularly because of what's been all over the news lately with some asshat named Kid Rock shooting up a case of beer, right? So like that's essentially the heart of that whole nonsense is that you know, Bud Light was, you know, and we drink Great Lakes beer on this program, but Bud Light,
we're a Great Lakes household as well.
Okay, good.
Big time.
Shout out to Great Lakes. I was actually there yesterday chatting with Troy and had a great convo there. But well, I won't rehash it, but what are your thoughts as a trans person when you hear that there's like literally a boycott of a beer company because they actually supported a transgender person?
So for me, it's like the kind of thing, again, if I sit in the comments, if I sit and read all of the negativity that comes out of it, at the end of the day, it doesn't help me, right? Like it's almost like sometimes not that I don't want to know, but I don't want to see the things that people write, right? It doesn't help me. It doesn't make me feel like it makes me feel angry. It makes me feel sad.
Right.
And so for me, you know, yes, I want to be safe around who I'm around. I want to know the people that are in my inner circles, of course. But outside of that, I just want to take the time, take the energy that I do have. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be alive. Disc golf is something that completely saved my life and helped me come out and helped me be who I am. And so for me to take this thing that I love so much and put all my energy and effort into it feels like the best way and best use of what I have.
Shout out to Neptune. Neptune make the discs.
Yeah, they're a discipline.
I know Frisbee's a brand name. Yeah. So that's why it's disc golf. It's not Frisbee golf.
Well, disc golf, yeah, there's a whole thing. And
it's like ping pong, right? Like ping pong is not the proper term for that sport because I think ping pong is a brand name. I believe it's called table tennis because it's the same way that disc golf would be called disc golf and not Frisbee golf because Frisbee is a brand name.
Yeah, you would know.
Unfortunately, I've done my homework
unfortunately, I don't throw frisbees. I throw discs. So,
but they're not frisbees. So that's okay. This is my ignorance. Okay, so I bike the waterfront trail all the time, and I see the course, and I see people playing it. I always thought they were throwing a frisbee, but it's not a frisbee. I mean, a flying disc, I should say, to be the proper term.
I guess the major difference about
is it heavier?
Well, it's way more. There's a lot of different nuances to it.
Okay.
So discs come in a variety of speeds, weights,
See, I'm learning.
Fades, turns, glides.
Wow.
And
I think I'd like it.
Yeah, and what you do is like the idea is that like you don't actually what you teach people to do with disc golf is that, you know, the idea or the hurdle around learning is that you need to learn, most people will learn that it's not really about throwing the disc, because your arms can only do so much. The idea is more around kind of creating a momentum in a swing in which your arm acts as kind of like a catapult. So if you think about like golf, there's like a backwards forwards motion that drives a ball. And so if you think about like your arm being kind of the vehicle,
Right.
The disc sits in your arm, and it's that same kind of movement that then launches the disc. So this is how people throw like 300, 400, 500 feet, is because they're using more of their body and then putting that energy from their body into discs. And so what we do is we teach a lot of new players how to play. We run everything, nobody has to pay to come play with us. We have equipment for people. If there's newer players, we always make sure that they have discs. And so we just like let people come. And it's like, if you want to play and you want to play disc golf in a queer space, come play with us. And then like also come play with me at leagues on Mondays, and come play with us at ladies leagues on Thursdays. Like it's not
beautiful.
I want to bring people kind of together. Right.
It's beautiful.
And so I've been helped by all these people. And so for me to create something that I would say, you know, don't go to those leagues or don't play with those people would be wrong, because those people have all kind of accepted and supported me, right?
So you never know who's listening to Toronto Mike. Like what a valued member of the FOTM community you are, Andy. If someone listening right now says, I want to be a part of this Toronto queer disc golf, do they just
they
go to Insta? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, so Instagram is Toronto Queer Disc Golf. You can send me a DM or send us a follow, like add a follow or whatnot. We run meeting groups, like we run these groups every Tuesday. And so the Tuesdays are at 6:30, and folks are able just to kind of show up to that. If folks are more comfortable in a smaller format or group format, we will take the time to take players out one-on-one or in small groups. And it's just what we love to do. And so folks often ask like, well, why do you spend so much time on something like this? And it's because we love it. And it's like, it's what we love to do.
Okay, I have one more question about that, but first I just want to really quickly shout out recyclemyelectronics.ca, because if anyone listening has old electronics, old technology devices that they want to get rid of, don't throw it in the garbage. The chemicals end up in the landfill, and it's bad for everybody. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, find out the nearest, the closest depot that has been accredited where you can drop off your tech and have it safely recycled. So thank you, recyclemyelectronics.ca, and thank you to the Moment Lab for your tremendous support. They specialize in public relations, and they have a team of experienced professionals who know how to craft stories that resonate with your audience and generate positive media coverage. So whether you're looking to launch a new product or build your reputation or manage a crisis, they have you covered. I'm happy to introduce anyone listening to Matt and Jared at the Moment Lab. Do you have to be queer to participate in your disc golf?
So the way I kind of look at disc golf is that I look at, so for me, for example, as somebody who showed up a long time as an ally, right, sometimes was hard for me to access queer spaces or explore queer spaces. And so I think the way I kind of look at it is like, if somebody wants to come play with us and is aware that the space is a queer space, they're welcome. Right? Like come play with us. And I've had, a parent of a queer or trans person come and play with us. I've had different things like that. And so for me, it's not about like closing it off. I obviously want to talk with the people of the group to make sure that they're okay with these kinds of like concessions, just because queer people in sports have been underrepresented, that they've had lack of access to spaces. So it is important to kind of like be aware that these spaces haven't been offered to a lot of people. And so we do welcome folks in. If somebody would like to come, I maybe would ask to send us a DM or check in with us. I don't ask for ID. I don't ask for how people identify. You don't have to come and say that you are something of, you don't have to say that you're part of the LGBTQ plus community to join, but we just like people to kind of think about the fact that this is a queer space. And if that resonates with people, and if they feel wanting to connect with that space, they're welcome to come play.
Andy, you know this song.
Very well.
There's actually an episode coming up. I believe it's scheduled for July 10th with the director of the new Lowest of the Low documentary.
Wow.
And FOTM Andrew Stokely is going to drop by and kick out his 10 favorite Lowest of the Low songs of all time. So there's a whole Lowest of the Low lovin' coming July 10th. But before I say those magic words Stu Stone loves so much, was there anything else, Andy, you wanted to share during your Toronto Mike debut here? I don't want you to be on your way home and be like, I forgot to mention
No, I
X."
think I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you taking the time to use your platform to help initiatives like ours and hearing our stories. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate you dropping by and sharing your story, and I hope I didn't say anything stupid. I'm just a curious cat who wants to learn and do the best I can, and I'm always learning, and this was a great experience for me.
Thank you so much.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,283rd show. You could follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. Andy, you are on Instagram. Is it Toronto Queer Disc Golf?
You got it.
On Instagram, follow Andy there. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery, they're at Great Lakes Beer. Palma Pasta's at Palma Pasta. Monaris is at Monaris. Recycle My Electronics are at EPRA_Canada. The Moment Lab are at The Moment Lab. And Ridley Funeral Home are at Ridley FH. I recorded with Brad Jones at Lakeshore Arts yesterday with a wonderful artist named Dessa. And I urge you to check that out as the most recent episode of Life's Undertaking. Our first road show, and it went really well. So shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. I'll see you all Sunday at 11 a.m. We'll be live at live.torontomike.com because Rob Pruce and Bob Willett are joining me to kick out quintessential Canadian jams. Enjoy your Canada Day long weekend. See you all then.
And I'll play this guitar just the best that I can.